Welcome to Behind the Blue Lines, a special segment of Unplanned and Untold, where we revisit some of our most compelling interviews to provide a space for reflection and education while uncovering the complexities that surround an unplanned pregnancy. Welcome back to another episode of Unplanned and Untold. I'm your host, Caitlin Willing, and today we have a different type of podcast for you. So along the way, we've realized that there are so many juicy topics that are packed within our podcast episodes, and we really wanted to take a moment and create a platform to unpack all of these juicy details. So welcome to the very first episode of Behind the Blue Lines. And today, our contributor has a very familiar face. You may have seen her do the trailers for some of our podcasts on Instagram. She's the woman behind the curtain for a lot of the inner workings of our podcast. And so a very unique part about her story, we'll get into that a little later, a couple episodes down the line, that she was one of our first community student moms at our Auburn hub, and she now works with us as the director of national marketing. So it is with great honor and privilege that I get to introduce you to our contributor today, Charlton Jones. Welcome to the podcast.
Wow, what an introduction.
You like that, huh?
Really hyping me up over here.
You you are the one that literally, I think of the Wizard of Oz. I'm like,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
great to be the face, which is great, but there are so many inner workings behind the curtain. And a lot of our listeners don't understand what goes into the production of a podcast and the marketing of it. And so our girl behind the scenes, you're finally get to kind of come into the light.
Yeah, wow, thanks. It's weird being on the video side because I feel like I'm normally looking into a phone, just kind of doing a quick little 30-second, hey, teaser, come listen to this episode. And now here we are. And I'm talking to you on the podcast. So it's really weird now to be on this side, but very, very cool. I'm super excited to be here.
Fun. I'm really excited because I think we've done close to 20 podcast interviews already.
Yeah.
And every one of them, there's like this nugget, this golden nugget that just rises to the top. And I'm like, oh, we need to unpack.
We should really talk about that.
Yes. And I've got to say, the most recent golden nugget that spurred a lot of chit chat, behind the scenes was coming from our last episode, Jennifer's story about her cryptic pregnancy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's not every day that you hear a story of someone who is essentially, really truly saying, I didn't know I was pregnant. And just having been pregnant before, I sit there and I think, wow, how do you not know? Oh my gosh, it's such an interesting story.
Absolutely. And I figured, this would be the great launch of this new segment is let's talk about cryptic pregnancies.
Let's dive off the deep end and talk about the craziest thing that's happened so far.
Like, wow. And I do need to preface all of this by saying we are not doctors. If you are listening right now, like we are
not a professional.
No, we are Google certified. We did our Google research on cryptic pregnancies. So take what we say with a grain of salt.
With a heavy grain of salt.
Which one is it?
Heavy, more like a sprinkle. We're really trying to just what we've done on a very, very quick emphasis that Google search.
I mean, even looking into the facts, my mind was blown by cryptic pregnancies and how we are not talking about them more often. Which is really crazy because they're not as, they're more prevalent than we think they are.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you say that because when we were looking this up, I was really shocked to figure out how prevalent they are. And for those of you that don't know, based on our little Google research, it's actually, okay, let me give you the stat. Studies estimate that 1 in 4 to 500 women are 20 weeks or 5 months pregnant before they even realize it. And going even more into the cryptic pregnancy aspect of that, 1 in 2,500 women go all the way to delivery before they even realize that they're having a baby.
That's crazy.
And that essentially means that it is 3 times more common to not know you're pregnant than to have triplets. And that blows my mind.
Mind blowing. You are more likely to not know you're pregnant than to actually get pregnant with triplets.
I can't imagine.
Like, holy moly. And if you are just tuning in for the first time, you've got to go back and listen to Jennifer's story because it is mind blowing. She was in labor, 16 years old, had no clue she was pregnant, passed out during her pregnancy. I'll let her tell the rest of the story because it gets really good. But
It's
truly,
shocking.
it really is shocking. And
It's
we're like,
shocking.
how is this actually not talked about? It is pretty
Hmm.
prevalent. And like, let's unpack that because I know when I found out I was pregnant, I mean, I wasn't that far along. I don't know about you.
Oh, I was girl. I knew so quick. I knew before I took the test because I was so regular.
Yeah.
And so, literally, I mean, I think it was the day after I was supposed to start my period. And I was like, I'm pregnant. I just know it. And I think 3 days later, I took a test and it was like positive.
Yep, exactly. Same with me. I mean, I was not that far along. I was,
Hmm.
all the symptoms of not feeling well. Sorry for the male listeners if there are any, but
Right.
tender breasts. Like usually
Just get
that's like a
into it.
dead giveaway. You're in the shower and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening?" And you took that test and those two blue
Mhm.
lines popped up dark, like super dark.
It's like you are pregnant. There is no doubt about it.
There's no doubt. But some women actually have false negative pregnancy tests,
Which is
which is
really interesting to me
crazy.
because I feel like we talk more frequently about false positives.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you know, but I don't know how common it is to have like a false positive versus a false negative, what the odds of that are.
Right. So when I worked at a pregnancy resource center, we saw a lot of false negatives over false
Oh,
positives. Usually, if it
wow.
was positive, she was pregnant. But the false negatives are very interesting because, when you're taking these pregnancy tests and you're not
Hmm.
trying, it's on a whim. And usually you're taking it at a weird kind of part of the day. And
Mm.
all of that takes, a toll on the hormone levels that are in like being tested in these pregnancy tests.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you're
Okay.
taking it at the end of the day, it's like 5 o'clock and you're pretty early along, there is a chance that it says negative, but you actually are pregnant, but those hormone levels have been diluted.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Now casually scared the next time I go to take
Take
a pregnancy
take them in the
test.
first thing in the morning. Fresh
Can't trust
pee.
that negative now.
Fresh meat. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I can't imagine. I don't know if Jennifer really went into detail. I don't think she even took a pregnancy test, to be honest. Like she really just didn't even
Well,
think she
no,
was pregnant.
because she was in active labor. Girl was having a baby.
She was totally, totally not sure what was going on there. And a little bit more in the research that we did, there are a group of women that are more susceptible at higher risk to having these
Hmm.
cryptic pregnancies. And I found that very interesting. And so I was like, we need
Yeah.
to talk about this because
Yeah.
if you fall into any of these categories, like you could be pregnant even though you're not feeling a lot of symptoms.
Yeah. Cause I absolutely, before we did the research, just thought it's just a one in a random number
Right.
chance. I didn't think that this was something you could be more susceptible to. So it's very interesting to know that if you've recently given birth, if
Yep.
you use birth control, if you have a condition like PCOS or, you're premenopausal. But the most interesting one to me is the fact that if you've never been pregnant,
Right.
you're more likely to have a cryptic pregnancy and to not know that you're pregnant, which, when you think about it, makes sense because you
Right.
haven't been pregnant. And so you don't know what that feels like.
Right.
But yeah, it just kind of, again, the whole topic, it blows my mind.
The one that really got me, and I saw this all the time back in the day working for the Pregnancy Resource Center, was women would come in and like they were breastfeeding, so they just thought they
Mm,
couldn't get pregnant at all. Like
yeah, I hear that all
kind
the
of,
time.
yeah, it's kind of like this wives' tale of as long as you're
Hmm.
breastfeeding, you can't get pregnant. That is a myth. Like
Not true. Here to
how
say it now.
how many times I've had to break the news to a poor girl who literally has a 3-month-old baby and is still breastfeeding that she is pregnant. I mean, it happened way more often than I ever thought it would.
Wow. Oh my
So
gosh.
knowing that, that helps a little bit with like, okay, guys, like if you are breastfeeding, you're still able to get pregnant.
Right. Well, it does kind of go back into that, the people that are more susceptible are people that if you've recently given birth and your body after you have a baby, it's still trying to get back to normal.
Yeah,
Things are not quite regulated. So again, it does make sense, but it's something that excuse me, it's something that I've never thought about.
exactly. There was this show. Do you remember? I don't know if I'm
Yes, I
showing
know
my
exactly
age.
what you're
Okay.
talking about. No, I know exactly what you're talking
It
about.
was like on TLC and it was
Yes.
I didn't know
I
I
didn't
was
know I was
pregnant.
pregnant.
And
Yes.
I was just fascinated with these stories, fascinated that
Absolutely.
they truly had no. And I'm going to be really honest here. A part of me envies the woman who didn't know she was pregnant because I just
Really?
feel like you're not having to really deal with all of these side effects
Mhm.
and just all the things that can make pregnancy so miserable. Like, how great one day to just be like, oh, here's my baby. Like, that was a quick 9 months.
Oh my gosh, Caitlin, no. Cause see, I'm way too type A for that. I would have a baby and not know I was pregnant and be like, oh, what are we gonna do? You have no diapers. Where are you gonna sleep? What are you gonna wear? Oh my gosh, we need everything and we need it all at once. And it gives
Now,
you no time to prepare.
maybe that first one, I could feel that with the first one, but having had five, I'm like, it would have been great if the last like three, four, or fifth one was a
We just
cryptic
didn't know.
pregnancy.
Yeah, no, see, I only have one, so I cannot relate to that at all.
It is so funny. And speaking of which, this is such a random thing, but pregnancy tests, we were talking about false,
Mhm.
negatives and what about false positives and a trick of the trade that I have learned along the way
Do
is,
tell.
pregnancy tests are so expensive, insanely
Yes.
expensive. And
Hmm.
a lot of people don't know this, but they have pregnancy tests at the dollar store and they
Okay.
work the same as the ones
Wait,
that
the
are a
exact
box of
same?
25. So they're not so I would say the highest end probably have to be the ones that pop up and say like you're pregnant or like baby
Mm-hmm.
or like I don't know what they say. Do they say, have you ever taken one of
Yeah,
those?
that's the one that I took.
Of course you would take that one.
We did not want it. We wanted to be sure, and I was
Of
like,
course.
I'm because you hear the horror stories, or I say horror story, but the stories of people that they take the test and they see it and it's like a
They're not
faint
sure.
line and they're like, "Am I pregnant? Am I not? I have to take another one." And I was like, "Nope, we are not
No.
doing that.
Spell it out,
You're
writing
gonna
on the
know.
wall.
I want the words. I want to visibly be able to read, are you pregnant or are you not?"
Oh my gosh, it is so funny. Yeah, no, I once I found out they sold these puppies at the dollar store, I was
You were
like,
like, "Sold." Yes.
sold. They work the exact same, which is a really, really crazy concept. And
Yeah.
also knowing before you are fully like showing, some women feel movement. Like, I don't know about you, but before you had a belly, did you ever feel movement?
Okay. So mm, interesting fact, I guess, about me. I carried my son, I guess we would say like closer to my back rather
Okay.
than up front. So
Right.
I didn't really quote unquote show for a long time. I mean, I definitely had like a little bit of a pregnancy belly. Um, but it wasn't like I was out here at like 5 or 6 months and people were visibly like, "Oh, you're pregnant." Like I could
Right.
still, if I wanted to, like I could have
Yes.
hit it.
Absolutely.
And so I mean, I'm forgetting your question now that you
About
asked.
feeling the movement. Like,
So,
did you feel him sooner? Like sometimes people talk about that and you're like, no, I've not felt any movement. Or you're like, oh, of course I have.
right. So I say that to say that because I carried him in the back, it was harder to feel movement. And so I remember I know you mentioned I was one of the first community student moms at Baby
Yes.
Steps. And so at the time there was me and it was literally one other girl. Like when I first got there, it was me and Caitlin. And if you haven't heard Caitlin's story, go back and listen to that because she was also on the podcast. And so it's me and Caitlin at the time. And I remember just talking to her and she would say, like, yeah. And if have you ever felt, it feels kind of like this. And she kind of describes, what I was like, yeah. She says, well, that's your baby. That's your baby moving. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. I had no
Truly.
idea.
Well, it depends on where the placenta is as well.
Right.
The placenta, it can attach like in the front, in
Mm.
between, it can attach in the back. And I really feel like that has a lot to do with how much movement you feel. I mean, with some babies, I could see like an elbow. I don't know what it was. I wish we could see. I really wish there was like x-ray vision into the belly. So you could see like what limb is like dragging
Right.
across
Like,
your
who is it?
belly.
Who's
What is
elbowing
this?
me
Is
down
it an
there?
elbow? Is it a knee? Is it a foot? Like, what is it? But some of my babies, I could feel that. And that's when the
Mhm.
placenta was, in the back. But then when it's in the front, it's so much harder to feel that movement. So I could totally
Really?
see where these women are coming
Yeah, I
from.
guess because it creates this kind of barrier, I guess, in
Yes.
between your stomach, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean the placement of the placenta is a huge deal, and it's wild to me that it attaches in different places, for each woman, which is
Mm.
crazy because with my last, the placenta actually attached over my cervix. So the
Oh.
cervix being, obviously where the baby comes out, that's got to dilate to open up,
Hmm.
and it's called placenta previa. I knew nothing about any of this until it happened to where
That's
the
that five
placenta.
baby knowledge coming
It
forth for
you just gain
you.
more and more knowledge. The more I swear, I've had something with every pregnancy. I could write a book about.
Mm.
None of them are the same.
More to
And
come
with
on
my
Unplanned and Untold book from
literally
Caitlin's birth stories.
all the birth stories, that placenta, and my husband were talking about this not too long ago. If it weren't for modern day technology, having that could have been a death
Mm.
sentence back in the day
Oh,
because
wow.
she was an automatic C-section. Like because they thought it grew like into the
Hmm.
uterus, it was not going to move. So when you start to dilate, that placenta starts tearing and like opening, and you can bleed out real quick. So mama and baby
Oh,
are in like big
wow.
trouble. So you're automatic. Like I was put on bed rest and all the thing. It's an
Hmm.
automatic C-section. And it's crazy how far technology has come because I bet you they didn't know that back in the day, like where the
Yeah.
placenta was in a woman.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I think it just goes to show it's kind of one of those things of a reminder that like childbirth is actually kind of dangerous. Like
Yes.
having a baby, it's no joke. It really is not for the faint of heart. And it even makes me further think of, gosh, those women that just do not know. I mean, how like and I think about these things that you're more privy to. And I mean, gosh, the risks, I can't imagine.
It is wild. And to think, we live in America where medical care is great compared to a lot of parts
Right.
of the world. But to also know the strength of the female body, like in third world countries, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're having babies without medical
Mm-hmm.
intervention. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, wow, like that is wild.
Which I do remember hearing when I was pregnant at one point that the body, this is a fun fact.
Yeah.
And if you know this or if you know that this is not true, please disprove me right now in this moment.
No, tell
But
me.
I remember hearing that the body, like if for some reason you were like, kind of like Jennifer did, like you passed out or you were just not conscious, like the body could deliver the baby on its own, like without you being awake,
Wow.
conscious there. Like that's how incredible the woman's body is for childbirth.
Wow. That is wild. That is absolutely wild. I mean, I could totally see that happening. It's time for a baby to come out, and so your body is going to do what it knows how to do.
Right.
And did you have any medical intervention with Cam? Like, did you do an epidural, or what did that look like for
Are
you?
we going into my story,
I'm
Caitlin?
curious because now that we're talking about how babies are born, I'm
Right,
like,
right.
I'm just so curious.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't want to say too much. Just if I do come
Yes,
back and share
you
my
will. We'll
story.
have your full story on here.
So, but teaser for you guys in terms of my story. Yes, I did have an epidural. Um, yeah.
And so you didn't really feel much.
Yeah,
See, I've
no,
never pushed a baby
I
out. So
felt
this is
nothing.
totally like five babies, never pushed one out.
Oh
I'm
yeah, because you
always,
had
they're
C-sections
all
with,
C-sections.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
so intrigued by women who actually go through the labor
yeah.
process.
I'm not the one to chat to about if you want to have like, if you want to know like how it feels or anything, because I did not feel anything up until I was about 6 centimeters dilated. Now
Wow.
I had to go in for an induction. So I was actively at the hospital and like I knew baby was coming and we were doing everything possible to get baby here, but
Yeah.
I did not feel anything. And I was just having conversations, with my family, my father-in-law, my husband. And, I mean, I was just, everybody's like so concerned, they walk around you like you're this timid little mouse. They're like, are you okay? And I was sitting, I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I just wish I could have a sandwich or something right about now. It's been like 5 hours. But I say that to say that I did have the absolute sweetest nurse, the world's sweetest nurse. And she was like, girl, if you think you might want that epidural, like you want to go ahead and get it now because he's got a long list of people he's going to have to get through to get to
Right.
you. And,
Yep.
when we hit a certain point, you can't have that epidural anymore. And so if you think you might want it, go ahead and I'll put your name on the list. And I
If
was
there's
like,
even like an
okay,
inkling that you're going to want
right,
this thing,
right.
it's now or never, or
Well,
you
and
hold your
then she
peace.
convinced me too, because she was like, we don't know how long it could take. And, you'll be able to sleep. And I was like, ooh, napping sounds great right now. So I mean, I was like, go ahead and put my name on the list. Well, of
Right.
course, during that time, I contractions start getting more frequent.
Exactly.
Things are ramping up. And I was
Yeah.
like, hey, it's probably not a bad idea. I went ahead and got on that list.
Where is it? Where are the drugs?
Where is he? Where is he? But yeah, and it's speaking alongside of that, the weirdest feeling having an
Right.
epidural because I
Yes. Oh
did
my
not know
gosh.
for the longest time. Truly, I didn't know until I had it
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was like a little boop, like shot, you're done. No, that is not it.
No, it's a
So
process. It's a whole
it's a
entire
process.
process.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
they put like this tube all the way up your spine and they were
It
just
is,
constantly feeding medicine back there
which
to
is
where you don't
great.
feel
I'm
anything.
so grateful for
Right. Like
epidural back.
medical advancements, huge fan, but kind of scary to think about.
Yes, absolutely. And with mine, I had epidurals and then I had spinals. So you do a spinal when you're gonna go like have a C-section. I think it affects you. Again, we are not doctors, and I probably should know what happened to my body
Girl, you've
during.
got 5 kids. I mean,
I'm like,
I feel like you know just as much.
sign me up. Sign me up for the drugs, not to feel it. I think the spinal takes into effect like a lot quicker. I don't know.
Mm,
It does like essentially the same thing. We will have to have
hmm.
a doctor. We'll have to have Carrie Henserling come on and
Absolutely.
talk
Come
about the
talk.
differences between spinal, epidural, like
Yes.
giving birth, all the things because like we
All
know
of the
nothing.
pregnancy things.
But it's that anticipation of the back and like having you
Hmm.
crouched over. And I'm a weenie when it comes to, I
Oh,
build it up in my
same.
head of like,
Oh,
how is
same.
this going to feel? So poor Jennifer's podcast, I'm thinking like she didn't even have time to think
No, she
through.
didn't wrap her brain around it.
No.
She literally woke up and there was this baby there. And can we talk about that for a
Oh
second?
my
Can you
God.
imagine what do you
No,
do with your life when you're in an instant, truly everything changes.
changed
You're a
the
high
second.
school student one moment, you're doing classes, and then this day you wake up, you have stomach pain, you think, I've got to go to the hospital, and you pass out, wake up, and you see your mom holding a baby.
I
Like,
really
what do
can't
you
wrap
do?
my mind. Again, I'm a rip the band-aid off kind of girl, to be completely honest. And so a part of me envies the fact that during those
Mm,
9 months, she did not feel a lot of this like gloom and loom. You know what I mean?
hmm.
Like the shame, the
Yeah,
stigma, I mean, she
yeah,
she kind of got shielded from that. But
absolutely.
in the same token, she was unable to prepare mentally and obviously
Right.
with physical items. So I'm like, dang, I really can't imagine. But if I could go back, could we have
Yeah.
a cryptic one, please?
Yeah, I would be very interested to know from other, like if we had other guests who had an unplanned
Yes.
pregnancy, or if anybody's listening and you had a cryptic pregnancy as your unplanned
Yes.
pregnancy and you want to write in, like mentally, how was that for you? And was it easier in a sense because you didn't have to experience any outward judgment, stigma, shame, or anything like that? Or was it almost more difficult for you because you, in a very quick moment,
Real
were
quick.
all of a sudden you're just a parent now?
Yep. And her mom, I think being a mom now thinking of what that was like for her
Mm-hmm.
mother, now that I'm on that end of it,
Right.
holy
Can you imagine
smokes.
if that happened to your kid?
Like that's your grandbaby. And
Oh
like
my gosh.
just right then and there, here it is. You know what I
Here you
mean?
are, grandma. Go ahead.
Like, Lucy, you have some explaining to do.
Oh my
Because yeah,
gosh.
her life changed in that moment. And now you're kind of taking care of two children. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you're a teenager, you don't got your crap all together. We would like to think we do.
No, absolutely not. I
So I'm
remember being
sure
in
she needed help.
college and I thought I had my crap together and I absolutely did not. So high school, there's no way I had my crap together.
So surely, I mean, 1 out of 2,500, right? That was the
Mm-hmm.
stat.
Yeah, one
Experience a
out of
cryptic
2,500.
pregnancy. I also heard they're called stealth pregnancies, which I think is so cool.
Ooh, sounds like
Stealth
a spy.
pregnancy.
Stealth pregnancy.
I feel like you'd have to name the child like after a spy name.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The only thing that's
Oh,
popping up that would be which this is just where my brain goes on this.
right.
I think there was like a way back in the day, like a Barbie spy movie.
What-
So I'm like, what would she be named Barbie?
Were you around when the Olsen twins used to do all their like spy mystery books
Yes,
and movies? Those were the
absolutely.
best.
I grew up
No.
on Mary Kate and Ashley.
Yes. Where are they these days? We need them in our lives. They need
Oh,
to
they're off
reproduce.
enjoying all the money they made as children, I'm
They need
sure.
to reproduce some of these movies for us.
Those are the live actions I need in my life, the Mary Kate and Ashley.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do they have kids? Maybe they'd be willing to come on the podcast and talk
Right.
about, I don't even
Would you even
know. I've
beg
never
here?
kept up, truly.
Yeah,
But
no.
surely 1 out of 2,500 pregnancies, there's got to be some other women out there listening to this podcast who've
Mhm.
experienced this. And we would love to hear like more about what was that like?
Right. Now, I do know personally, I've
Yeah.
met one girl. I don't
Really?
have a great relationship with her. She's more
Yeah.
of a friend that I've
Right.
met in passing. But I do know one girl who had a cryptic pregnancy up to about, I think she was either 7 or 8 months before she found out.
Wow.
So she basically went the entire pregnancy. She had no idea. And
Wow.
her story, I have no idea if she'd be willing to share it. If she would
Right.
come on the podcast, I'm going to
Right.
have to talk to her. But
Yes.
it's crazy all of the things that she went through in those 2 months and her labor story. Oh my
Right.
gosh, I really hope she would come.
It makes me wonder, how much exactly do these women show at all? Like, do people just think they've gained a little weight? And I'm sure, when you watch that show, I didn't know I was
Mm-hmm.
pregnant. A lot of times, the parents who are interviewed on there, they're like, I knew she was gaining weight, but
Right,
it wasn't like all in the belly. And like you said, especially that first
right.
pregnancy when you're really young, you can hide it.
Mm-hmm.
Our
You
our
can
student
hide
moms
it.
at Baby Steps, there are a few that hid it for their entire pregnant. I mean, they threw
Mm,
a pullover, like a hoodie,
yes,
had
yes,
no clue they were pregnant. None.
yes. Well, and especially kind of speaking to my own experience, like I was at college at the time where it was you wore like Nike shorts and the XXL, like
Yes.
oversized t-shirts,
Right.
So I'm like a tinier framed person. And so I
Right.
would wear these extra large or large t-shirts, not really intentionally trying to hide it, but I mean, it did, like it hit it. And I would
Yep.
stand up and people would go, "Oh, you are pregnant."
What's going on under there?
Because you just don't. I mean, it's crazy the way that clothes can hide these things.
It is. And just the type of body, kind of like you said, there is just
Mm-hmm.
no way I could have ever hit it. My belly always gets so incredibly big. Like one
Mm.
time somebody asked if I was carrying twins and I just about died. I'll never forget
I
it. At Home
could not
Depot.
function.
She's like, "Are you sure you don't have twins?" And my
Are
husband was
you
with me. We're
sure,
at Home Depot.
ma'am? I have
Oh my
been to the appointments. Thank
God.
you. You have
I've
not.
seen
That
it.
would
I'm
crush me.
sure it's not twins. And she's like, "Well, are you due soon?" And like, I wasn't due for like another form. I'll
Oh,
never forget it. For
she
another
just
4 months,
got her shovel
just
out and
kept
started
digging
digging.
and digging. And I'm just standing there. My husband's thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to
Please be
like
quiet.
rebuild this woman up in the car ride home, pick up the
Yeah.
pieces," because
Yeah.
sometimes people don't really know what to say. But it all depends on how you're carrying the baby too. I mean, some I guess could
Mm-hmm.
hide it more than others can hide it. I'm so grateful that with Jennifer's story, she made it to the hospital.
Yeah.
A lot of these other stories, they
Like on I
don't.
didn't know I was pregnant.
Yes.
It's like you hear that they're at home, they had
They're
the
at
baby in
home.
the tub or something
Yes.
like
Or in the
random.
toilet. Like they think
Yes.
they have to go to the bathroom and it's like a
Mhm.
baby and like in the toilet. Like I can't even imagine how traumatizing.
I
Literally.
Your girl was traumatized enough just being pregnant in college, like having a cryptic pregnancy, and then you all of a sudden just have a baby. And like, I cannot imagine just staring at an infant and being like, oh, how did that happen?
Yes, the resilience, the true resilience of
Those girls
handling
are
that.
strong.
Truly, I can't wrap my mind around, you know, the life-changing moment. And again, the
Hmm.
not having that control, like you said, like not being able to think through what do I need? What are all the things that are about to come
Hmm.
my way? So, man, Jennifer, hats off to you, girl. Like,
Applause, homegirl.
oh my
Yeah,
gosh, I don't know how you did it. Truly an amazing story. And again, if you have not listened to it, you've really got to take a deep dive into her podcast episode.
really go back. Yes.
Well, this was fun. This was
Oh
so
my gosh, so
fun.
fun. I feel like I've just been chatting.
I do too. And to our listeners, we hope that this is fun for you. We're testing the waters, seeing if this is something that you would like. There's just so many good nuggets we would love to unpack. And if there are things you want to hear us talk about, taboo
Mhm.
topics, which is what we love to do, concerning pregnancy or, even motherhood, like early motherhood, if there's anything you want to hear us talk about and unpack, please like put it in the comments, DM us, let us know.
Let us know for episode 2 of Behind the Blue Lines on Unplanned and Untold.
I love it. Do you want to close us out? That was so
Oh my
good.
gosh.
You can
Oh
close
my
us
gosh.
out.
No,
Yes.
no. Well, I could
You
I
got to
could
do
do
your
my best.
sultry voice. Speak right into the
Let
mic.
me speak right into the
A
mic and
little
just let our
ASMR for
viewers
us.
know. Little tap. Just in case anybody loves ASMR.
I do love ASMR, but that's a side note.
Oh gosh. Yeah, no, Caitlin, take it away. This is your show. I am just your guest here.
Oh my gosh, stop. Well, thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in to another episode. This one's not called Unplanned and Untold, but Behind the Blue Lines. And we hope to have you back for our next episode. Have a great day. Bye bye. Do you want to be a part of an organization that is the first of its kind to empower student moms? Your support can impact generations to come. Consider making a financial contribution at babysteps.org.